You're listening to One Non-Blonde, the podcast that goes beyond the surface and digs deeper for the truth around us. I'm your host, Kim. Join me for this weekly podcast where my amazing guests sit down and talk about what's going on in their mind. You might be surprised and always be entertained. Welcome back to One Non-Blonde. I'm your host, Kim, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Neil Perry Gordon, and he is an accomplished author and just an amazing man in general. And I am so happy because him and I have started a little partnership here. And thank you for being a sponsor today. So Neil Perry Gordon is sponsoring the show. So welcome, Neil.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to see you. So in fact, I have to admit to my audience that I lost track of time, and Neil had to call me and say, are we still on? I'm like, I'm at the end of the book. I've got less than 50 pages, I think, 45 pages left to this book, The Bomb Squad. And I didn't want to get ripped away from the pages. So welcome, and tell us all about what you're doing and what inspires you.
Well, writing inspires me. I'm sort of been a writing machine for the past, 4 years now. I got kicked off to write my first book, A Cobbler's Tale, and that was it. I mean, I've been hooked ever since. So I have 4 published novels. The Bomb Squad is the newest one. I will have another one coming up in June called Hope City. And I just finished the first draft manuscript of another novel, which will, time that gets published, will probably be, I'm guessing, around August or September. And that's it's a little far off at this point.
That's good. Now, I know that the writing inspires you, but I know that you do historical. So are you a history buff? Is that your background? How did you decide that history was going to be where you were going to put your fiction?
Because I like reading historical fiction. That's my genre. That when I'm looking for a book, that's my first go-to genre, is historical fiction. Because I like to feel like when I'm reading something, I'm learning something at the same time, and I like to learn history. So that's a good way of digesting history in an entertaining way. So rather than just reading a textbook about it. So I like reading it, so that's why I like writing about it as well. And I also like it because, when you write in a certain time period, Bomb Squad is early 1900s. You put yourself in that era. You try to think of what things were like. You have to make references to how things were back then. What kind of cars did they drive? What was the value of $1 as compared to a value of $1 today? If they're going to buy a pretzel on the street corner, how much would they pay for it? Mm-hmm. So you got to sort of figure those things out. Are they going to pay a nickel? They're going to pay a quarter. What kind of suit they're going to wear, what kind of hats would they wear, women's clothing, all those little background things you have to sort of like also research and check out. So that's also part of the fun of writing historical fiction.
And where do you, like, when you're thinking of a character, where do you get that? Like, is the character there first and then you kind of like start in their nuances, or how do you, like, Rothschild, for example, Rothman, I'm sorry, not Rothschild, Rothman, in the book, Max is kind of like, as he's evolving within the book, you could just see layers coming off of him and get to know him more. So right. How does that happen?
Well, I like to have competent men in my book as my protagonist, as my hero. If you read more of my books, you will see all my main characters, my leading characters, are men. And so I was talking to someone else about that, and like, I actually got a review from somebody, and it was from a woman, and she said she gave me a glowing review. The only thing I would complain about was the women were not prominent enough. I'm like, okay, but I'm a man. I write from a man's point of view, and I do have a woman editor who helps me bring out the feminine qualities that I would be lacking. So I strive for that, and especially in the relationships, trying to build the relationships up. That's usually an area where I have to work on, and she knows that about me. When you start working with an editor, you give the editor the manuscript, and my editor then will read it and then make comments about it, and the more developmental comments, and saying, okay, you need to develop this a little bit more, or this relationship is not strong enough, or this is not believable, or maybe this is not in the right order. So, it's sort of like helping polish it up, sort of. And that's invaluable, because, you just write it, and then things that she comes back and you go, oh yeah, it's so obvious, that's what you have to do, but I haven't seen it. I would have seen it going in, I would have fixed it. So, yeah. So I write about that, though my newest manuscript that I'm writing now is going to a place where I wasn't sure that I wanted to go there. It's much darker. It's much, from the woman's point of view. I have a major female character in it, and she goes through torturous conflict and horrible conditions in this book. So I had to say to her, as a writer, I was a little bit concerned about going there, but then I decided I wanted to expand myself, and I ended up doing it. Now I'm just going to go back and revise it a couple of times before I give it to my editor.
I think it's important, like you said, to stretch yourself. But I think, like, for example, the Bomb Squad, it is primarily going to be a male-dominated type of storyline because of the background. It's the backdrop of the World War I, the spies, the people who were in these positions weren't going to be a woman. You're not going to see a woman detective. You're not going to see so much the female doctors being in charge of Ellis Island. So, that's what I liked about it. It was very believable, because I think if you would have thrown in a lead into a position that was not believable, I don't think it would have bode as well to me as a fictional piece.
Yeah, believability is a lot. You have. I was listening to Neil Gaiman, famous writer, and he was talking about one of the most important things of being a writer is being a fiction writer is to write the truth. And what does that mean, to write the truth? So I think what it means is, write something that someone's going to believe in what you're having to say. Today we have so many things that happen in our life. We always have that comment like, you couldn't make that stuff up. Mm-hmm. But in fiction, you don't get that play. You don't get that someone giving you that leeway of something you can't make that up by doing something that's so far out of the realm of possibility, unless you're writing fantasy or something, or science fiction. So you have to be able to write the truth. Hemingway talked about that too, by being honest with your readers. So that's always a quest. In my new book that's coming out, Hope City, it takes place in Alaska in 1898 during the gold rush. And one character I have in there is the famous writer Jack London.
Call of the Wild.
Call of the Wild. And I did research about him, and my book begins with the Jack London credo, which is amazing. And he talks about that on how to live life and be honest with your writing and such. So his whole being, his whole philosophy about life is sort of what drives that book in a way.
I like my daughter. My daughter is an avid reader. In fact, I was talking to her earlier. I said, "You've got to read this book." And so she's in college and she's also working full time. But she says, "I want to get to this book," because I was telling her all about it. And but one of the things that when you mentioned Jack London, Call of the Wild, that was her first book that she read that brought her to liking to read. In fact, that was like my husband. I'll never forget. She was 11 years old, 6th grade. And she was you could not get this child to sit down to read. And so my husband they would sit down, and every night they would read a couple, he would read a page, she'd read a page. And so they read this together. And she got to the point where I was halfway through the book. She's like, Dad, can we read tonight? Can we read longer? And, so that is what sparked her desire to read and to like get her imagination flowing through a book. So that's really cool.
Okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to get your daughter, I'm going to give her an advanced reader copy of my book,
Oh, awesome.
Hope City, and then because it's good to have advanced readers who can give me reviews. So then when I get up on Amazon, there's already reviews on there. So I'm going to give her an advanced reader copy. If that's as you say, Jack London was so important to her, I think she'll connect with the story.
Oh, I definitely think so too. In fact, her book report she had to write was called Chili Dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, Jack London was a great man. I mean, he went up to the Klondike himself. My story doesn't take place in the Klondike. The Klondike is up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that was around the same time, 1896, 97, 98. They went to this place in Canada called Dawson City. And that's where the major gold rush was. That's where everybody went. My story takes place in another part of Alaska called Hope, which was a much smaller gold rush at the time. But back then, during the summer, there was about 3,000 people in that area. And that time in 1898, that was the most populous city in all of Alaska for that short period of time. But Jack London went to Alaska. He lost a couple of teeth to scurvy. He ended up getting a limp in his leg, and then he comes back and he talks about it, saying that he wouldn't, regardless of what happened to him, him and I think went with his cousin, he would never he was so happy that he did it. He doesn't regret one thing about it. So he was a real adventurer and a great writer, and believed going out and getting things done. So my book begins when Jack London is giving the commencement address to the Mission High School students in San Francisco before my two characters head up there to Alaska for the summer.
Oh, that's awesome. So now I have a question for you. You write historical fiction. Is there any you've gone from World War I, before the Americans were into the war, and now you're up in the gold rush. Is there like any particular with all the history behind us, what motivates you to write in that specific, do you like all of a sudden go, I want to learn about that? Or how do you get motivation to start a book and, that timepiece?
Well, each one was different. When I began with Cobbler's Tale, I decided to write about my great-grandparents' story. And that took place in 1910 when my great-grandfather left Eastern Europe and left his pregnant wife and 3 children, one of which was my grandfather, back there. And he came to America, came to New York, came to the Lower East Side as a cobbler to establish his business. And then he would go back in a year to get them and bring them back. But he ended up delaying his return year after year after year. And then World War I broke out and he couldn't get them. So they were stuck there. My book I make my great-grandfather much more adventurous and much more brave than he really was. And I add a lot more drama to their lives, but that's basically what the story's about. So that started me in that genre and in that era of early 1900s. My next book, Moonflower, actually takes place in the 1670s.
Ooh, it's a big
also in New York, but it was called New Amsterdam. That's when the Dutch controlled it. And this book, right around that time, 1670, 75, is when the English started taking over and basically just came in and took the city from the Dutch and called it New York. And Albany, New York, back then was called Beverwyck. So this is a story of another teenage boy, 17-year-old teenage boy that goes on this quest to connect with the Great Spirit. And the book begins with him sitting with a shaman, and the shaman is going to have him go on this quest. But to go on this quest, he has to consume this concoction that's made from the seeds of the moonflower, which is a flower that only blooms at night. And when you drink this concoction, you lose your memory up to that point. Everything you know is gone. You have a blank slate. And it's a way of renewing yourself. It's like a rebirth. So what the shaman says to him, before you're about to drink this, he gives him parchment and a quill, write everything down you can remember about your life, your earliest memory to your latest memory, because this will be the document that you carry forth after you drink this liquid, after you drink this moonflower. So he writes everything down he could possibly remember. And then on the other side, when he wakes up, he has all these pages, but they're just words on a page. There's no emotional connection to any of his memories anymore. So that's how the book begins. And he goes on this journey, this epic journey that takes him across all of Northeast New York, America, through New England. He starts in New York and Vermont and New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Then he travels over to Amsterdam. And then the book brings him down to the slave coast of Africa, over to the slave market of Charlestown, and then back up to the New York area again. So that's Moonflower. It's historical fiction, but it has a little metaphysical type of influence. But this whole the evil character there is really visits him in a sort of like a dream state. So I always like to put a little bit of that in there. While the Bomb Squad is straight historical fiction, there's no metaphysical descriptions in there. But The Righteous One, my third book, it's all metaphysical fiction. And that book is interesting. It's based on a lot of Kabbalic wisdom, mysticism. And it's the battle between good and evil takes place in the dream world. It sort of touches on the idea of the journey of the consciousness. When we die and leave our body, does our consciousness live on? Can the consciousness die? So that's a metaphysical fiction. So I went right into that. In fact, Kirkus, which is one of the premier review companies in America, called me today, and they want to feature that book in some promotions in the fall, which was exciting. They gave me a review. I thought it was a good review, but they told me it's one of the top reviews they gave. I was like, oh, really? I wasn't aware. Thank you.
No.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you do. I mean, you are. I said I've been very fortunate to get to read the first book, and I know you said you're gonna let me read some other ones too. But you have, like I was telling you earlier, you have a gift. I mean, people can write, but there's so many people who can transcend you into. I mean, I felt like I was there, and that's something that is a gift, and you do it in such a way that's very quick, in the sense of not like, oh, it's a simple book. It's such fast pace, and your mind is just like you're there, and that you don't want to leave it. Like you're almost like in your own little world when you're reading your books, which I love.
Thank you. I write short chapters,
which I like.
Everyone likes short chapters. I don't like when I first did Cobbler's Tale, people go, first of all, I love your short chapters. I go, oh, okay. So I write, my chapters are average are like 4 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I write in scenes. So each chapter is a scene. And I usually change point of views from chapter to chapter. That's another style I have. So I'll either write in third person or I'll write in first person. And if I'm writing in first person, I keep in first person. So the Bomb Squad is in third person, but you have from 2 different points of characters from 2 different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
You have Dr. Harold Schwartz's point of view, and you have Detective Max Rothman. What also I liked about the Bomb Squad, which was fun, and wonder your opinion about it, was the archetypes from Carl Jung, and when he's trying to put together his Bomb Squad.
I love that, because I studied a little bit of psychology and sociology in college too. So I was like, I'm watching this, and I thought it was really brilliant to be able to bring in, like you said, what was going on in that pop psychology at the time, but that's how he ended up putting together this team. And I thought that was really cool. And then I wanted to say one of my favorite, I wouldn't say favorite lines, but one of the lines that kind of struck out at me was, I don't want to give too much away, but when Harold and Max are together, and he said, which kind of struck a chord, we were talking, he goes, you couldn't make this up in a novel. Right. All their circumstances. I was like, no, you couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like, I thought that was really a great play on words. Like when they're having this conversation, like, yeah, you couldn't make this stuff up. An author couldn't make this up.
I did.
But it was really, I mean, like I said, I'm towards the end, and I'm like, don't tell me the end, but I am like, it's really great. And even when you're saying that you don't have a female perspective, I felt like the female characters in this book, they were what I would think are true to that time frame, that time period, on how they interacted with the men in their world, and like especially like Maria, how she ended up having would happen to her. That seems very believable. Caitlin actually was a very strong character if you think about it. She kind of was like in your face because she could have easily been, thrown away. So I thought she was a pretty strong character in that sense too.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, the women are strong in all my books, but they're not the main character. But my new book, my new manuscript, there's two characters. It's basically a love story in a horrible setting, and one of the female and male. I can give you a hint about the story if you want to hear it.
I would love to hear it because I love knowing this, because like I'm so happy because I get to be your friend now, and so we get to chat. Like I said, I like to chat about books.
So in my first book, A Cobbler's Tale, and in my third book, The Righteous One, I touch on this topic. There was a Jewish mafiosa group back in the mid 1920s to mid 1930s called the Zvi Migdal, Argentinian Jews who would send agents to Poland, to shtetls, Jewish villages, poor Jewish villages, and recruit young Jewish girls under the false pretenses of marrying rich Jewish Argentinian businessmen who were looking for wives. And they would put advertisements in synagogues saying, come, we're interviewing for girls who want to come and marry Argentinian men, rich men, and live a wonderful life in Buenos Aires, as the life of a princess. And a lot of families fell for it. And so they signed up. So my story begins with this young woman. Of course, she's gorgeous, beautiful, luxurious red hair, stunning. Everyone's eyes turn to see her. And she falls in love with the university professor she meets. She's Jewish and he's not. And of course, the father will not allow her daughter to marry a non-Jew. They panic and they set her up to marry this Argentinian man who is recruiting girls to be sex slaves in Buenos Aires. So he gets a hold of her and they take her to Buenos Aires as a sex slave. And of course, her boyfriend, who she loves, has to come and rescue her. So that's a little bit of the story of what I'm calling, the name of that book is going to be White Slave. And in Buenos Aires, in that time, there were thousands of brothels. It was legal. Prostitution was legal in that time, all run by Jewish men with Jewish girls, and they were sex slaves. They couldn't escape. It was horrible. So I had to really go to a place I never went before in terms of writing about that. So that's challenging as a writer to try to expand yourself to things that are not so comfortable. But I got through it. And so now I'll have to keep working my draft a little bit, and then I'll go to the editor.
Yeah, it sounds like a good book though, because I think even though Bomb Squad is based in the 1917 area, it seems still very relevant. It kind of makes you think about political parties now. You're either
right.
You're to the right, to the left. There's where's the moderate? And I even though it's we're talking about German nationals, her job, German Americans, but are they really? They're still looking for the fatherland, and where do you find your loyalties? I'm American. Oh, even though you were born in Germany, but now you're American, and I get to be loyal to my country. I really like that because again, I'm a person who likes to pick apart something. My degree is in American Studies. So for me, I'm always looking for the pop culture type of thing, or the connection of the social dynamics of America at the time something is written by an American author. So I see a lot of that, there's kind of the inner makings of what's going on right now politically in your books. Did you kind of put that in there, or am I just...
Exactly, because my subtitle is Clash of the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And both men think they're right. Both men believe in their cause. So you always have that saying, you chose the wrong side of history. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously Dr. Harold Schwartz chose the wrong side of history because the Germans lost the war. But you have Eddie, German patriot back that time, thought he was doing the right thing, loyal to the fatherland, loyal for what he believed in, patriotic to the bone. And then you have the American who believes the same thing. So each man thinks they're doing the right thing. I mean, you have Jews and Palestinians each thinking they're doing the right thing, and that's why these endless wars are endless,
Mm-hmm.
because no one ever wants to make compromise to find a middle ground. But that's human nature. So I did put that into the book on purpose. Yeah, for sure.
Like I said, I get to see the struggle, and I mean, anybody who reads this book can really relate to the struggle that's going on even today in our society. So that's why I hats off to you, because like I said, as a person who loves to look into like the nuances of a book, you hit every like I said, I told you there are authors that I love to read, and there's some that you kind of like, okay, I was talking to Rick Sotomayor yesterday, who's a relationship coach, and he was talking about you have your list of what you want in a relationship. Well, I realize I have a list of what I want in my authors. And you check off all the lists, which is good.
Okay.
Because I like that. I mean, it's important to have I always want to think when I'm reading, but not to the point of over like you said, like a textbook. It's not that. It's just you and then you want to read more about what is going on. Because your general history of what happened during that time, but you want to kind of delve in a little deeper. It's like, okay, where did he get that information? Where did he get that information? So I really, like the whole cigar bomb situation, because obviously I don't think I'm giving too much away, because obviously it's called The Bomb Squad. So, those were interesting, things to learn about.
Yeah, and all those facts actually did happen. The cigar bombs and the other things I bring in. So when I write historical fiction and I use an event, that event actually happened at that time. So if that didn't happen until a year before or a year after, I wouldn't use it in my story. I only would use what is accurate to the moment of when I'm writing the story. So that's sort of the guidelines I try to keep myself, the guardrails I try to keep myself in between.
Are all your characters, do you kind of go with your background, your cultural background with all your characters? Or?
Yeah, well, they're all Jewish.
Yeah. So yeah,
they're all Jewish. Yeah, everyone, all my characters are Jewish. I write from, I don't know, I don't think I could write from someone else's perspective, because this is what I know best culturally. Not like I'm a religious Jew, but culturally I'm Jewish. So, and being in New York, there's a culture there. So it's not even just being a Jew, it's more of, I think, being a New Yorker more than anything else. Everyone sort of develops the type of person they are by where the environment they grow up in. So that's me. And I have several books that I'm still planning to write, and also nothing is going to drift away from that. Though in Hope City, I do write about Catholicism and there's one of my themes is the 7 deadly sins. So I did have to do research and learn about that. And I use that a lot in the book, but I do it from, my main character is a Jewish boy from San Francisco who poses as a Catholic boy under a different name when he gets there. And so he has to sort of learn what the Catholic religion is about. So that's how I push myself to learn what the Catholicism part of religion was. And I talk about that in Hope City a lot.
Yeah, I think now I'm Catholic, and so for me, I know that we as Catholics, we pride ourselves, and I'm sure you're going to kind of laugh. We pride ourselves that we're so rooted in the Jewish faith, and it's I think we are, because we use a lot of the Old Testament, but doesn't necessarily mean we definitely know everything about it.
Yeah, well, if you read A Cobbler's Tale, you'll learn a lot about things you probably didn't know about, because back in when people lived in shtetls in Eastern Europe, there weren't different types of Jews like there are today. You have Hasidics and Orthodox and conservative and liberal. And you have a spectrum of Jews, from those who are you go to synagogue for the high holy days a couple times a year to those who are super religious. Back then, everyone was sort of the same thing. But you did have different types. And in that book, I talk about the Torah scholars, which were the young men, young boys, who were the more intellectual and were able to learn and advance from an intellectual point of view. And those were the ones who were honored. Those are the ones who were revered. Those are the ones who they wanted. If you married a Torah scholar, you hit a home run. And then there was the craftspeople, the merchants, the cobblers and the butchers and the bakers. And if you were born into one of those families, you weren't going to be a Torah scholar. You're going to go into your father's business. And what happened was, and not just from my book, but what happened was when all those people came from Eastern Europe to America, to New York and the Lower East Side, those who had work and those who were able to make a living were not the Torah scholars. There were the merchants who had skills. Everyone needed a cobbler and everyone needed a baker and everyone needed a butcher, but no one needed to learn anything from these Torah scholars. So they struggled when they got here. They had to learn a profession. So, my main character, Pincus, who was the cobbler, he was disrespected at home. But here, he was a big man. And that was why he didn't want to go home right away, because all of a sudden, from being disrespected, all of a sudden, he's respected. And that was like a major thing for him, just from an ego point of view. And that's why he ended up delaying going home to get his family. And then the war broke out.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because, like you said, it's like it's almost kind of like, here we go again today. Obviously the doctors and the first responders and the nurses and the scientists for this COVID is important, but now we're revering the grocery workers, the people who are the construction workers, the people who are kind of like the backbone of what we're doing. They're getting a little bit more respect instead of just being like, oh, it's just it's them. So yeah,
you're right. A very interesting perspective. Yeah, I really like that, because all of a sudden those who we looked down upon before, perhaps, and you work in the grocery store, now we revere them, now we honor them, now they're the ones on the front lines. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's funny. I see these people, these healthcare workers and everyone else on the front lines, and the courage that they have to go in every day and come home at night and have to go back the next morning. It's amazing. And then I get up and I go to the grocery store and I'm like frightened. And I see everyone else is so frightened. And it's like, where's my courage in all this? And then you just see people who are just like, okay, let's bring it on. A deadly virus, and they're every day going in after that and trying to save people. It's admirable.
I know, it's amazing. But I think that's I like with your reader, your books too. I think your the main characters, they're just going and they're doing what they need to do, not thinking of their safety necessarily. They're just thinking about what they need to do is right, and that's what I like about your books too.
Right. Yeah, that's always something that, to me, it inspires me, when people do things just to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences. Because sometimes the consequences are not good, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. And not a lot of people have that courage to do the right thing. And most people won't do it. But those who do, have to respect them and call them out on it.
Well, I think that it's interesting to talk to you about how you're developing your characters, and I do like the fact that they do have like they're all Jewish, because I personally, I've learned so much. Now I have to tell you, I'm not a fish eater, and again, I'm not giving away things, but gefilte fish, is it gefilte fish? So
gefilte fish, yeah.
And they're like, and so like, oh, yeah, it's not that great. And then when they ate the other fish from the sea, I forget what kind of fish that was, from when they were by the Gibraltar in the Canary Islands, and they're like, oh, this was so delicious, and they're like, this isn't what we're usually eating.
I know.
So what is gefilte fish?
Gefilte fish is what you usually eat at Passover, and it's carp. It's like a mixture of three fishes. It's like compressed. It's actually pretty good, but it's not fish as we think. It's sort of like a mishmash of fish. It comes in a can or in a jar. And you eat it at Passover. That's usually the holiday you eat it at. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So yeah, Jews are not known for eating fish. That's why, I put that in there. But yeah, of course, in the Mediterranean, you get all sorts of wonderful fish.
Yeah, I thought it was cute. It was like, we don't usually eat fish, and then they're like, and it's like, is it gefilte fish? Yeah, I mean, I felt like there's like a little bit of like that humor in there without being humorous, in the sense of like, I could see your lightheartedness in there, that like,
Right.
you're throwing a little bit of that, you're throwing that culture and what something is familiar to you within your characters, and when they're having these conversations, which I
Right.
liked.
Yeah. And I read about Gibraltar. Have you been to Gibraltar?
I have not, but I actually, through Facebook and just me doing podcasts, I actually have a friend that is in Gibraltar that I interviewed him once before. I'm going to interview him again, and he loves Gibraltar. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that too. Have you been?
I've been. Yeah, that's why I know about the monkeys. Yeah. So yeah, it's a fun place to visit. You go up the hill. It's a mountain. You go up to the top of Gibraltar. It's the Rock of Gibraltar, right? And that was, the British still run it. They still control Gibraltar. But during World War I and World War II, it was a key military outpost because it was at the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea. Now it's not used for that anymore, but you can tour it. And there are monkeys there, and the monkeys are very amusing. But they do come and they could bite you, and so you have to be careful. So I put that in my book as part of my story a little bit.
Yeah. Now, are they the capuchin monkeys, or are they some other kind of monkey? Do you know?
I don't remember the name. I think I don't remember if I write it in the book or not, but there's a certain type of monkey. They're not very, they're very, they're not big. They're small. Probably,
I think they might be like capuchins. I'm gonna look that up because because when I went to I was in Honduras, and the capuchins would come in. Oh my gosh, they just come in, like let us jump in your lap and all that. So that I bet you that's what it is.
Yeah, Googling it.
Yeah, I'm trying to Google it real quick. I can do this with.
Yeah, so Gibraltar is fun. When you go to Gibraltar, there is an airport, and the airport is right past customs. So as you go through customs, if the plane is coming in, you have to stop while the plane lands, because the plane goes across the highway, and you have to wait for the plane to land and cross, and then they allow traffic to go back again. So it creates tremendous traffic jams when a plane comes in. So the only road in and out also crisscrosses over over the airplane runway, of the airport runway. So that's fun. And then all of a sudden you go from Spain, and all of a sudden you're in England.
Oh wow! I want to go. I really want to go. So they are the Gibraltar. They're called the Gibraltar Barbary macaws. So they're kind of like the capuchins, but they're a little different. So apparently they're very territorial. That's what this just said.
Yeah, they are, definitely. They want to steal things from you.
Yeah. My daughter, not the daughter that I was talking about before, but my other daughter, she there's a primate sanctuary here in Clearwater. And so there's like well, have you watched was it the Tiger King?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, anyways, so there's people who like to buy exotic animals and think that they're cute pets, and then obviously when they become more than just a little teeny thing, they have to get rid of them. So we have in Palm Harbor area, we have a primate sanctuary where a lot of these macaws and capuchins and orangutan, and they've got gorillas, and they're all have pretty much been confiscated from homes of people who thought that it would be okay to own an orangutan who's like a couple 100 pounds, 300 pounds or 400 pounds. So my daughter would do that as one of her service projects, was because she was in medical. She went and she helped feed them. In fact, I was talking to your son Max. I'm like, this is one of the ones that one of my daughters that I'm sure he would love to talk to her. She'd love to talk to him. Because she was doing all this stuff with, feeding them and taking care of them and trying to help nurture them back, because some of them got diabetes because they weren't eating the proper foods. And, it's just, interesting, what people think they can do with animals.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Don't belong there. Nature, that's one thing we learn about this virus, I think, is that, this virus was caused by nature. And it just reminds us we have to respect Mother Nature, because if we don't, the next time something like this happens, it could be climate change that causes it, and there won't be any immunization for climate change. There won't be any antiviral medication for climate change. So, this needs to be a major wake-up call for us to respect the environment on top of everything else that we're trying to get through to survive this. But it shows you how important it is that Mother Nature, no matter what you do, it doesn't care what party you are, what religion you are, where you're from, it affects everybody.
Yeah, I know. It's like when this first happened, I'm not usually one who likes to post anything political per se, but I just kind of made a kind of a kind of a somewhat rant, thing about, I'm like, we guys need to stop being politicized. We need to stop looking at things like whose fault is it, whatever. We need to come together and we need to figure out how to not only just try to stop this virus, but also, like you said, what's going on? What are we doing wrong with our planet that causing all these things to happen,
Yeah, now's the time.
Yeah. So hopefully it's a wake-up call, hopefully, because right now people are a little kind of inconvenienced. But like you said, when there's not enough oxygen or not enough land to sustain, our agriculture, the land is so destroyed, you can't cure that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. So I know you have a lot of things going on now with the releases. Are you doing like a big, I know obviously now there's no book tour or anything like that because of right now there's uncertainty, but how do you usually, like when you release a book, how does that usually go in the process of, like, is there like a big release? Is there like, do you try to do some book signings before coronavirus?
I wasn't doing book sign. I did some events. I wasn't much into doing book signings. The main thing I try to do is everything is digital these days. So everything's online. I do podcasts, of course. I need to get reviews for my books. That's very important. In fact, one of the offers I'll make to your audience right now is a free download of the Bomb Squad. So if they send me their email to neilperrygordon@gmail.com, I'll send them a copy of the book like I sent it to you. And all I ask is read the book. Hopefully you'll like it, and hopefully you'll give me 5 stars and put it on Amazon. So it works. So the readers, your audience will get a free copy of my book, and hopefully I'll get some reviews out of it, which will be helpful.
And then my next question for you then is, where are we able to get all your books? Is it just an Amazon, or do you have it Barnes and Noble? Or where exactly can we get you?
Well, I would direct everybody to Amazon because that's the complete collection there. So
yeah,
I have ebooks and paperback books there of all my books. I have audiobooks of my first 2, of Cobbler's Tale and Moonflower, but I have Bomb Squad and Righteous One being recorded now on audiobook. So in a couple of weeks, I'll have all 4 of my books in all formats. And then in the future books, everything, when I first bring a book out, it automatically comes out in ebook and paperback. And then it takes a little while to get it out in audiobook. But it eventually gets done.
I need to get a hard copy. I have a digital copy and I'm enjoying it, but I'm one of those old-fashioned people. I like to have my book. And, I keep them. I got like stacks of books, and and so and I share them. And that's what I like about it too. Is like sometimes when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a good book," I'm like, "Oh, here, you got to read this one. This is so amazing." So I'm gonna get a hard copy for myself as well.
Oh, good.
And you'll have to sign it.
I'll sign it for you.
I would really be honored, because that's something that's, like I said, books are they're like a gift. And that's why I thank you, because it is a gift, and it's an escape. It's opportunity to use your imagination. It's an opportunity to just, I don't know, just get some stress out of your life by reading something. So I encourage people, if you want to go into a place where it is, just my dog's tail, you can see it in the back. That's my cat's tail, sorry, that was my dog. But you can get involved in this book. It's like you get absorbed into this book, and I loved it. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So again, we were talking to Neil Perry Gordon, who is an amazing author and humanitarian. And I know you have, I'm going to interview, I'm giving everybody a preview. I'm going to be interviewing your son. So, Max, in a couple of days. And I love what he's doing. You want to just kind of give a little snippet of what, like a little
Yeah,
sneak preview?
he's a unique individual. Max, for now years, he's been on this path. So he calls himself a rewilder. So he has rewilded himself. He has rebooted himself to nature. So he is very much in tune with the natural environment. He lives and works on a biodynamic farm in Vermont. He is into plant medicine. He's into foraging for food. He learned primitive skills, you know, to having to survive in the wilderness. He's gone to school for that. He has a degree from the SUNY ESF, the Environmental School of Forestry, in environmental sciences and indigenous studies. So he is full on board. They just butchered a cow. 2 days ago, he called me up. Dad, we just killed a cow and butchered it. I was like, what? So he's just telling me the story, how they had to shoot the cow and then they butchered the cow and then they skinned the hide, and he's skinning the hide. And, you know, we all go to the grocery store, we go buy our meat and we have no idea what it takes to get that meat. So he's doing it, you know, so he is the real thing. He's very authentic. He's very honest. He's a wonderful person. People love relating to him, and I'm happy he's up there in a good place. So I'm excited for him to be on your show.
I am too. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I've already sent, actually, because he sent me some information, and I already sent it off to my one son, who is actually, he's studying to be doing beekeeping.
They had beekeeping where at his farm.
Yeah, so I saw that, and then so he's been wanting to learn how to do that. So he's been doing. He's under the tutelage of a lady who's got a little farm, and she's trying to help him start up his own. So every chance he gets, he goes, "This would be a great place to start a beehive, Mom." So
Yeah.
he said, "No, I'm really excited for what you're doing, and obviously, you know, you have that opportunity to. Your son is using his imagination and what his strengths to better the world. So thank you very much for the Gordon family. You know, as he said, the dynamic duo. I get.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to One Non-Blonde. And again, please check out Neil Perry Gordon on Amazon.com. And also, if you send him your email, he will, and I'll put that in the show notes. You will be able to get a free download of the Bomb Squad, which I highly, highly, highly recommend, and give it a 5 stars. Plus, if you can go beyond 5, you can go plus. Do it for him because it's really great. And you continue writing for us, please, Neil.
I am. As soon as I get off this, I'm going to go back to my writing.
Well, as soon as I get off this, I'm going to go finish that book. It's like about 45 pages. Well, thank you and have a good day. Bye.